Hello everybody, my name is Mike Langlois and I wanted to talk to you today about another gaming concept. And the gaming concept I want to talk to you about today is known as the boss or the big bad. Most video games have some sort of large boss monster creature thing at the end of each level. Mario had Donkey Kong first, and then he ended up having Bowser. Link in The Legend of Zelda has the wizard Ganon, and World of Warcraft has Arthas the Lich King. So those are some examples of bosses. And what's important about a boss is that they're very, very difficult and challenging to defeat. And you need to defeat them to go to the next level of the game or achieve the reward or loot that you're looking for. So they're very challenging. Now, I wanted to explain a little bit about some of the basic principles that you require to down a boss, because downing a boss is a way of saying defeating that huge, big, bad creature. It can be a dragon, as I said, it could be an undead king or a dark wizard, or it could be something as simple as a machine that's gone out of control and is testing you in a lab in Portal. So there's a whole bunch of different ways you can look at bosses, but they're all boiled down to something fairly similar. And in order to defeat the boss, you need to do three things. One is the boss requires strategy. So you need to have a strategy. You can't just rush into whatever the boss situation is and then when the fight begins, hack away at it or cast spells at it. Usually that'll just end up with what we call a wipe, meaning you and your team, if you're doing it as a team, are going to fail. You can't do that. You need to go in with some sort of strategy, some sort of plan, and often gamers will do a lot of research online, looking at TankSpot or other websites where they can kind of take a look at what other people have tried that has allowed them to defeat the boss. So first thing is it requires strategy. Second thing is it requires teamwork. Usually, if we're talking about MMOs, it requires a group effort. For example, Arthas, it requires some sort of team effort. We can't have just tanks, we can't have just healers, we can't have just casters. We need everyone working in concert, using the strategy, but working as a team. So, two things so far, strategy and teamwork. The third thing, and this is probably the most important thing, is that defeating a boss requires patience. It requires tons of patience. As Jane McGonigal has pointed out, and other people have also pointed out, 80% of the time we're playing video games, we're trying and failing. And that includes when you're working with a boss, and that's especially when you're working with a boss. It's some of the most challenging content in the game, so it's to be expected that you're not going to get there the first time, even if you've got a great team and even if you have a great strategy. So the most important part of defeating a boss, or defeating the big bad, is having patience. So, why am I telling you this? Because this is something, as many of these game principles, that can apply to both gamers as patients and also therapists as people that are trying to work on their business. And so I'm going to talk with you a little bit about both of those things. So think about what could be the boss or the big bad in your life. Think about what the next level you want to advance to or what loot you want to drop. Maybe the boss is really your boss at work and you're having a very hard time getting along with them. Maybe it's a director at an agency and you just can't stand him. How can you work with that? How can you down that big boss? And I don't necessarily mean defeat and get the person fired or somehow come in with a sword. That would really not get you very far. But what kind of strategy and technique can you use to defeat that boss in terms of what's happening in your life? Another example for adolescents is a teacher can be your boss. Teacher can be a big bad. And why is that happening? You want to ask yourself, what is it that you can do to strategize? Are there people that you could have as part of your team that could help you with this? And what kind of patience do you need to have in order to deal with this teacher? Is it doing more classwork? Is it doing tutoring after school? Do you need to pull in another member of your team, like a guidance counselor or a school social worker, to help you with it? If you think about that as something that needs a strategy so that you can down the boss, maybe you'll get some ideas that might help move you forward to your next level in school. But it can also be The big bad or the boss can be a bunch of things. It can be a coldness in your relationship. Maybe you and your partner aren't getting along as much anymore. And this cold intimacy void is the big boss. This giant void creature that's sprung up between the two of you that you can't really seem to figure out how to defeat. And you have to figure out, how can we strategize so that we can defeat this creature, this void in our lives, and how can we get closer? What kind of teamwork do we need to do to push through this and defeat this big bad? And the big bad can be depression, the big bad can be your anxiety, the big bad or the boss can be any one of these things. It's a variation on what Michael White once described in the externalization of the problem. That if you take a look at whatever the problem is, whether it be with a boss, with a teacher, with a loved one, with a child, and you externalize it so that the problem is this boss that you can team up with someone else and help defeat it, you're going to go a long way. So notice I'm not telling you to demonize the person or demonize the teacher or demonize the boss, but to try to figure out a way that you can externalize whatever problem it is and look at it as this boss that needs to get defeated. And once you do that, you then have to go back and say, okay, well, what do I need to do to strategize? What do I need to do? How have other people managed to pass this class? How do other people manage to get their relationships healed? What do other people do when they have a hard time with their boss at work? So you need to strategize. You need teamwork. You need to ask for help. Whether it's at work and you need a coach and you want to ask for some coaching, whether it's at school and you want some extra help there, or whether you need to call a therapist in to help you with your relationship or your depression or your anxiety. So you need to do both of those things, but then you also need to be patient, because a lot of times these problems, these big bosses, got big and got strong because they were there for a while. And you're learning a new thing and you're learning a new strategy. And even with a great team, it may take a while for you to down whatever the boss is that you're trying to figure out. So you want to apply those principles of strategy, teamwork, and patience even when you figure out what your big bad or what your boss is. So I wanted to tell you these things to give you a snippet of a couple of things. And this sort of shows you how I work with gamers, with patients that are gamers, how I apply some of the game principles and how I can help them apply some of the game principles so that the games become a real powerful source of healing and instruction in their life. Because that's one of the cool things about games, is it really helps us tap into some of our creative potential and problem-solving skills that may not be as easily seen in the world outside the game. So one of the reasons I wanted to give you this snippet was so that you kind of got a sense of what it's like to work with me if you're a gamer, or what it's like to work with me if you are a therapist that wants to refer a gamer. This is some of the stuff that you could expect us to talk about. I also wanted to have you take a listen at this because I wanted to give you a sense of what it's like to get coaching from me or get consulting from me. So that if you're a private practitioner and you're looking to build your practice, or if you're a private practitioner and you're looking to go into social media and try to integrate technology in Web 2.0, I wanted you to get a sense of what it would be like if we worked together, either via Skype or if you came into my office. Some of the way you're hearing and talking, hearing me talk, would be kind of what you would get when you were with me in the office. Last but not least, I do want to put a plug in for my book. If you're interested in gaming or interested in the application of game theory to psychotherapy, which is, I think, a pretty new and interesting piece of our work, kind of gamification and using games to understand therapy and using games to understand patients rather than just pathologize them. If any of that interests you, then you might find my book interesting. It's called Reset: Video Games and Psychotherapy. And it's available at Amazon and at Barnes & Noble, and it's going to be available for the iBook shortly. If you're interested in any of those things, please feel free to contact me at the information that's going to follow at the end of this video, because there's a chance that I might be able to do some work with you that might help you down a boss and advance yourself to the next level. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I'm Mike Langlois, LICSW. Take care.